guys, it's Amanda and welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another video. Today I will be going over my top 10 favorite vampire books. So let's get into it. I am fully in the spooky mood. I am fully in my vampire aesthetic right now, and honestly this is my favorite aesthetic ever, is the Victorian vampire gothy aesthetic. I live by this aesthetic, so I thought it would be proper to fully immerse myself in this aesthetic for today's video. So today I wanted to talk about my top 10 favorite vampire books that I have read so far, and these are perfect books for you to sink your teeth into. And yes, I did just do that. I did just do that pun. These books are going to be in no particular order. Let's just get started. The first book I have on this list is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Now this is a recent read. I read this over the summer. It definitely is very controversial. People either love it or hate it. I was honestly pretty much in the middle. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I gave it a 3 stars, I think. This is basically your typical vampire meets werewolf love story. It's perfectly in Ali Hazelwood fashion, where it's like the whole like alpha male and the small female girl, but she's also a vampire. It definitely gets very graphic, and if you read this book you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know my opinion on that. Let's just say that I don't know my opinion on that, and I don't think I will ever have an opinion on that. So read this book at your own risk. That's our first book. The second book I read earlier this year, and this was, I think, by far my favorite book of this year so far, and that is An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely love this. This is basically Secret History meets Dracula meets Carmilla. I can't. It's so perfect. It is about these two women who go to this prestigious college where they study literature and poetry, and this one professor takes a liking in both of them, and she starts to show some signs that she may or may not be a vampire, and that other people in this book may also be a vampire. It's basically where just spend the whole book sitting in their apartment drinking wine by candlelight while talking about love and poetry, and oh, I loved this book so much. It was very beautiful. The writing in this was so gorgeous. I love S.T. Gibson's writing, and I just thought it was so perfect in every way. If you like what I just described, you will definitely love this book. Next book is technically 2 books in one, but I'm still gonna count it, and that is, of course, Midnight Sun and Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. I personally like Midnight Sun way better because it is Edward's perspective of Twilight, and I absolutely love him. Of course, I love him so much, and I love his wording and how he says things, and just the writing in Midnight Sun I think is so much better than Twilight is. But of course I understand if you're not all Twilight fans, like I am a diehard Twilight fan, but I do think Midnight Sun is 10 times better than Twilight. Technically those are 2 books, but I'm gonna count it as one. Midnight Sun and Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. Next is a very interesting book, and I read this last summer, and that is House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. This was all the rage last summer, and it got so many good reviews. I'm one of them. I really liked this book. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and what I really love about this is that it's only really implied that they're vampires. The word vampire is never ever said in this book. So our main character, Marion, she sees an ad in a paper for a blood maid. Blood maids are basically just women that work at very rich people's houses, and they offer themselves up as food. So they bleed for them, and the rich and wealthy will drink their blood, and that keeps them young and healthy and beautiful. It's dark, it's twisted, but I love how it's all up to your imagination and interpretation of it. They are technically not vampires. Like, they're not actually like biting people. They're just literally just drinking it as wine, and they create these bonds with these women, and it's very dark, and it's honestly beautiful too. There is a slight romance in this book, and I absolutely adored it. Yeah, this book I read within 2 days. It was such a page turner. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. By the end of it, I just closed the book and I sat there for a minute. I'm like, huh, I just went through that, and I really enjoyed it. The next book I have to recommend is, of course, the original, the Holy Grail, and that is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I have 2 of my copies on this table here. Of course, I recommend you reading the source material for all of this goodness. I read Dracula last summer. I really enjoyed it. Of course, it's a classic, so it is going to be a little bit of an adjustment to what we usually read nowadays, especially what I usually read nowadays. But I liked how a lot of it was letter form. A lot of it is in the form of letters from Jonathan Harker to Mina and vice versa, and I like how the book is set up that way. You get the story through the letters while also the regular narration of it. I loved the symbolism in this book. I loved the imagery in this book, and of course I loved Dracula in this book and all the beautiful quotes that he says in this book that I cry at, and I definitely think you should read the source material for all of this good stuff. So the next book on my list is another S.T. Gibson book, and that is A Dowry of Blood. I read this 2 Octobers ago, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. The only disappointment I had with it was that it was too short. It was too short. I finished it and I said, why did it just end? I want more. I need more. This book, another book where it doesn't actually name them as vampires, or it doesn't actually name Dracula himself. This book is basically told by all of Dracula's brides, all of the women that he has taken and made into vampires, and it is extremely graphic, and definitely look up all the trigger warnings in it because it is very dark and it definitely goes deep into some topics that are definitely uncomfortable, and I was a little uncomfortable reading it, but I got through it. But another thing is that this book, our main protagonist, I forget her name, I put her name on the screen, I'm sorry I'm forgetting it right now. It's all told in second person, and that's what I absolutely love. So this whole time she's speaking to Dracula. We assume that it is Dracula because, again, it's never said. All it is spoken as, I hate you. You're the one that did this to me. You drank my blood, you used me, and you threw me out to the streets when you were done with me. I thought it was just so beautiful, and by the end of the book, it ends basically as if it was just a whole journal to him, to this him that we're learning about, and I thought it was so beyond perfect. I have to read excerpt from it because I think it is just too freaking perfect. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. This is my last love letter to you, though some would call it a confession. It is so beyond beautiful, and I love the writing in this. I love S.T. Gibson's writing so much. It is so lyrical and poetic and just so dark. I loved this book so much. But yes, I would definitely read all of the trigger warnings before you head into this book because it is a doozy. Next, we have A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This is basically described as adult Twilight. Instead of vampires and humans, it is vampires, humans, and demons. But our main protagonists, Matthew Claremont and Diana Bishop. It is basically adult Twilight where the vampire falls in love with the witch, and it is forbidden because their breeds can't mix, and there's so many similarities to Twilight in this, but it is definitely much more adult, and it goes way deeper into the whole story. And this is a trilogy. This is the All Souls trilogy by Deborah Harkness. I have only read the first 2. I am still waiting to read the last one because I just do not want this story to end. It goes through the story of how these species have come into quote-unquote our world, and we travel, we go back in time. It is so much fun, it is so detailed, and I just love getting lost in this world, and that's why I just do not want to read the last one yet because I don't want it to end. The 2 books in this series that I've read so far, I gave these a 5 out of 5 stars. Next is Hunting Prince Dracula by Kerri Maniscalco. This is the 2nd book in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. I would definitely read the Stalking Jack the Ripper series in order because there are definitely spoilers and you have to read them in order. But that being said, Hunting Prince Dracula is the 2nd book, and it is of course all about them hunting Prince Dracula. I love Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell. I love their banter, and when I read this back in 8th grade, I knew, like, it was so fun for me to read this, especially at that age. I just remember it always making me laugh while also me just freaking out over the love story between Audrey Rose and Thomas. And in of course, all of the Dracula themes in this book, and Vlad the Impaler. They're basically hunting Vlad the Impaler and trying to figure out his spirit has come back, and they're trying to hunt him down. And I can't really say much else because there are a lot of spoilers to the plot of it. I really loved it because it brought in both the same vibes of Stalking Jack the Ripper and continued on the story, of course, but added way more vampire-esque elements to the story. And yeah, I think this was the favorite books of that series. Next is Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. Of course, I had to put this on my list. It is a classic. Anne Rice is the queen of vampire lore, and I think the first book of the Vampire Chronicles is a must-read for anyone who loves vampires as much as I do. And of course, the movie of Interview with a Vampire is my favorite thing of all time, with Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. It is so dark, and it's so fun to read about, and just, again, immerse yourself into this dark and twisted yet beautifully elegant world of Anne Rice. And I love everything of Anne Rice, and I only started watching the Interview with a Vampire series. I'm only on the first episode, but I really like that new take on it and the reimagining of the story as well. But I definitely think this book is a must read if you love vampires and just the dark Victorian Gothic vibes of that. But of course, basically, if you do not know the story, it is basically, as the title suggests, it is an interview with a vampire. We're following our main vampire, Louis. So it is Louis speaking this story to the reporter, and that is how the book is set out, of him just telling his story of how he has lived as a vampire all these years and who created him, and that is, of course, the Prince Lestat. And I'll leave you with that. My final book on this list, and I definitely think this is my favorite, I definitely left my favorite for last, that is Dracul by Dacre Stoker and J.D. Barker. You have heard me talk about this book on this channel for how many years now, but this book is probably my favorite vampire book of all time. Dracul is basically a mixture of the story Dracula and Bram Stoker's life. When you're finished reading this, and even while you're reading it, you're like, you question what is real. You question, did this really happen? Did Bram Stoker actually experience these things, which made him have the ideas to write Dracula? Because Dracula, we've heard so many myths and stories of how he wrote Dracula, and how there was a big chunk of it taken out before it was published and put out to the public. Publishers that he went to said, like, this was too dark, you should change it. So, like, we don't know what the original story really was. There's a whole thing in the back of Dracul where it goes deep into all of those myths and the history of Bram Stoker actually writing this book of Dracula. And it goes deep into how there were a couple of the original story published. There were only a couple, and like some of them are still out there, and they're so rare, and they're going from, like, I don't know, millions of dollars if you can find them. So basically it's sad because, like, the original Dracula as Bram Stoker wanted it is basically gone and dead from the world, and we don't know how he really wanted it. This book, Dracul, kind of dives into it, and you question if this is honestly true. Like, you don't know if this book is fact or fiction, and that's what I absolutely love about this book, because the line between fantasy and reality completely blurs. It is done in such a beautiful and scary and horrific way. I cried at the end of this book. I thought it was absolutely perfect. I would say you would have to read Dracula and understand Dracula before reading this book, so you know the different themes of this book and the different mentionings of the characters in Dracula. I will never stop talking about this book. I loved this book with all my heart, and I think it is so perfect for every vampire fan there is. So those are my top 10 favorite vampire books. I think all of these are perfect for October, and they're perfect for spooky season, and I hope that you pick these up and you read them by candlelight, and you drink blood and you just have fun with these books, because I absolutely had so much fun with these books, and I love vampires. I love vampires, as we all know. So if you have read any of these books, or if you plan to read any of these books, please do let me know. But yeah, that is going to be the end of today's video. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit the like button, hit subscribe if you have not already, and click the notification bell so you'll be notified every single time that I upload. I upload every single week. And if you want to find me anywhere else for any more bookish content like this, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, GoodReads, Pinterest, and in between the pages of a book, or in a lonely coffin in the ground. And as always, remember to be the Captain Jack Sparrow of your story, and may your compass lead you to amazing things. And I shall see you guys in my next video. Happy reading, my friends.